Hello, my name is Carl Freeman, and I'm here to provide a recommendations report based off of a SWOT analysis that was performed on Verizon Communications Incorporated, better known as Verizon Wireless. In the SWOT analysis, we did a high-depth overview and intensive research on their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and in our basing our recommendations purely off of the findings of that research and what we believe would be the best outcome for both CSR practices and also for profitability. As we dive into the report, one of the first things that we want to start looking at is Verizon's strengths. One of the biggest strengths that Verizon does carry is the fact that its employee satisfaction is above most and all carriers actually within the United States, showing that they do have an engagement portion. If we really look at employee satisfaction, we start to see connections through research and empirical data that supports that it improves engagement within the company itself. Engagement within the company is easily associated with overall business scores for customer satisfaction at that point. So what are some of the things that kind of drive this employee happiness and satisfaction within the company itself? Well, it's those pillars of compensation, benefits, and then that work-life balance. Verizon makes sure it prides itself on all three of those. It averagely pays about $3,000 more than the next closest competitor as far as wages for customer service representatives. It also offers more PTO with less requirements of working conditions, like years of working and services. It also provides a higher 401k match and investments within the employee themselves that other companies don't quite provide, or not to that extent, especially if we start looking at someone like T-Mobile, who for the most part until recently with the merger hasn't been able to provide those type of compensations just due to its size and economic ability. So with Verizon being the giant that it has, it is able to actually invest in its people in those manners to help create that satisfaction. Now, do we see results from the satisfaction with the employees? We do, to a certain point. Verizon for the past 3 years has continued to rank number 2 overall in customer satisfaction based on an index done by J.D. Power. J.D. Power is a third-party company that reviews the customer satisfaction scores just based off anonymous surveys and other data collection strategies. Verizon has never dropped below the 800 mark as far as that index goes. And although T-Mobile has held the number 1 spot, when we truly look at data actually coming in, Verizon holds a larger amount of just customer base. Therefore, Verizon is looking at a lot more of actual customer surveys that would actually promote it. So if we look at it as a percentage breakdown, there's far more volume that shows that customers are more happy with Verizon in the volume aspect than necessarily that percentage aspect that shows that T-Mobile might be ranked number 1 as far as customer satisfaction overall. So that's a big win for Verizon and a big win for its employees. Being able to keep that customer satisfaction is one of the pillars that's going to keep Verizon alive, considering that it's incapable of keeping up with price wars or doesn't choose to, since it is kind of overpriced in comparison to the services being offered by its competitors. So customer service would be a key indicator of its success or being able to hang on to that success. Some of the weaknesses, though, that we dive into is the fact that Verizon's gone through a lot of cultural changes. First off with its CEO, followed up by a large amount of headcount decreasing and separation packages for tenured reps. So with that new culture that's coming in, you have a lot of hesitancy with the new CEO, considering that Hans Vestberg has a negative background walking into the company, which was about a year ago, just due to its partnership with Ericsson. Ericsson was a European company that was allegedly got in trouble for violations of bribery and things like that. Ended up costing him millions of dollars. So with Hans Vestberg being chosen to be the new face of Verizon, it came with a little bit of hesitancy from the employee base. Hans then did offer what was called the voluntary separation package, or VSP. VSP offered the package to anybody that had a seniority level of 10 years or higher to basically be paid out to leave the company and not return. The majority of these reps did end up taking it, so you lost a lot of expertise and tenure and just knowledge it's difficult to replace and takes a lot of time to replace. And on top of not being able to replace it, they're not choosing to do so with people. One of the other things that we're seeing with the weaknesses of Verizon is that it's changing its processes to go with more of an automated flow. So instead of increasing its headcount or trying to bring its headcount back, it's actually trying to operate off of a low headcount budget while creating a streamlined automation system to deal with everyday transactions. For customer service representative or frontline representatives, what this report is mostly focused on, that heavily affects them in the fact that the call types or the support types or transaction types that they're used to doing has all of a sudden changed. The customers are attempting to do this as an automated system, but still prefer human interaction. So once the actual automation system fails, you have this fallover of them calling into or approaching an actual human being. These low tenured reps, already underskilled and undertrained, aren't prepared with these new processes and having to work through these new problems, which is basically escalated situations and trying to resolve the automated system instead of just trying to resolve the customer transaction. This could potentially, and we're actually starting to see signs as we visit that previous slide again, that there is a dip within the Verizon customer service score. Although, like I said, they haven't dropped below 800 at this point, they have decreased since that actual VSP package has been displayed and they lost that tenure. There seems to be a direct correlation when viewing that data in that manner. Some opportunities that we can definitely look at for Verizon is they need to gain back trust of their customers. They've had a couple bad scenarios that have really kind of damaged and fractured their brand as far as the trust aspect with their customer. They've had a data breach, which has cost millions of personal information for customers, including financial records or even credit card, social security numbers, that type of stuff, primarily done by phishing and DOS hacking. The other big one is transparent. They've lost trust with their transparency by hiding things within their terms and agreements that allows them to sell collected data from their users by like usage reports and things like that to marketers and actually to law enforcement agencies for tracing and tracking. So without the transparency and a little bit of like drop within the security itself, the customer trust is just starting to fall. And with lack of trust comes it's another reason to not stick around. When we start looking at the idea that I'm paying more on a certain solution that I also don't trust, then all of a sudden we start evaluating what are our values and does this company reflect our values. The customer is going to judge these things as the company's overall value on how they handle them and if they continue to occur. Verizon has been noticing that they have an increase month over or year over year, just like most companies, of these phishing attacks that are costing millions of dollars. The National Security Index for the FBI has actually noticed that the amount lost in revenue just due to phishing attacks have actually gained from 140 million up to 152 million in just 1 year. So emphasis on trying to regain this trust is just a really big opportunity for them. Trying to get some of this like security back, huge opportunity for them. And then being more transparent and try to gain that trust in that way also is also a really big one. It's really hard to shake off these type of brands once they're on you. It's a challenging thing to overcome. Some of the bigger threats that we're seeing as well when we're doing our report is that Verizon is slowly losing its edge as far as like being the dominant marketplace. It was reported by Reuters and by CNET that they actually had a decrease of users of about 63,000, while T-Mobile, with its acquisition of Sprint, has now surpassed AT&T as the number 2 and is actually gaining more customers than has gained more customers this year than all 3 providers. So as Verizon actually seeing the loss. So as Verizon is slowly starting to lose its consumer base, we're seeing the rise of T-Mobile. One of the edges that Verizon always had was being the first to its technology. 5G being the new thing, but the struggle that Verizon is having with the 5G right now is that T-Mobile is also putting out what's known as a 5th generation network for their company. Granted, they're not the same technology, but Verizon has been emphasizing its marketing campaign to try to explain the difference, though seeing very little results. T-Mobile is offering what is named the same thing as what Verizon is at a greater or lesser price with a greater expansion. Verizon's 5G is only accessible in major actual cities, usually dominated by higher class social classes. So your common person, middle class people, aren't even seeing the effects of 5G at the moment, where T-Mobile is advertising directly for that market class. And we're starting to see the effects of that just due to the crossover in general. So some of the recommendations that we can really state for Verizon to just kind of try to keep this lead within the marketplace that they have is first and foremost is they got to start putting back investments into their people. The automation program is not a bad thing, and outsourcing is definitely a profitable viability that most companies do take. It just comes with a lot of risks. If the partner centers and your internal centers aren't adequately trained or have the proper tools to be able to actually assist the transactions that are needed, they're going to continue to just lose customer faith. If you continue to lose customer faith, you're going to continue to just lose your customer base in general. So skilling up your employees to be able to accurately be able to efficiently, solve the issues and the transactions of the customers would greatly improve that overall relationship with the customer themselves. The second important part about that actually is if you're going to move to an automated process, there's going to have to be some customer education that goes into it. As these customers are going to be calling into their reps, the reps or customer service frontline employees are going to have to be able to be prepared to teach customers on how to navigate these new systems. If they're not trained accordingly or properly, they're not going to be able to do so. To successfully transition your workforce and your profits into more of an automated system like Verizon is trying to do, you need your employees capable of being able to assist in that training and that conversion process for the customers. You need them to put it out there and to teach. The second concept around training is around security policies. Those need to be stated, clear, simple, and reinforced consistently, whether that is in-person training, consistent workshops. But phishing takes up 22% of the overall theft and fraudulent activity that's occurred, according to Verizon Wireless's corporate report. So phishing is done by social engineering. Social engineering is a complete concept of just playing on human factors and human error. You start getting a tired employee or a non-attentive employee, or even just an employee that isn't aware of how to prevent these measures from happening, it's going to be an easy target for fraudsters every time. Reinforcement and practice will always prevent mass hits. This is the basic study of human factor psychology. Retention, repetition around all policies that are security driven. In the long run, this is going to start establishing more trust with the customers. Verizon continues to have these breaches, more and more trust is going to get lost. But if Verizon can hang on to their security and start showing a decrease in the amount of information that's being leaked out by their company, especially in comparison to their competitors, it'll show a much more trusting bond and a much more secure company to be partnered with as far as the consumer standpoint is concerned. And then the last opportunity or recommendation that Verizon could really focus on would be customer loyalty programs. Right now, the marketplace is so saturated with cell phones that you're not fighting for new customers unless you're stealing a customer from a competitor. And since competitors are amongst themselves are constantly doing marketing campaigns that does exactly that, we're stuck in this concept of basically buying a customer. It's far more expensive to actually try to onboard a new customer than it is to keep an old one, and we're just customer swapping, whether you're AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon. More loyalty programs, like incentives around like free data access for a coupon for just tenure of a customer, or coupons towards actual upgrades. We see all the time that new phones are always available at great discounted prices for new lines. But if we're able to start providing some form, or as the marketplace is able to start providing some forms of customer loyalty that would give the same type of upgrade benefits for cell phones for customers that have stayed with the business for a long period of time, you're going to hang on to that customer base. You start hanging on to that customer base, you start improving that trust factor and stuff like that, and then you're going to have to, then all of a sudden you don't necessarily need to pay for marketing. It's going to be back to the word of mouth style. Customers are happy that they're able to get cell phones that they want at the same prices as new customers are, and then customers are going to trust the company that they're with and continue to share that information with their friends. So ultimately, this would be a low-cost way of being able to retain customers without having to actually go through the process of customer onboarding, which looks like it's an average about every 3 years. There's a rotation that goes around. But as far as the rest of the issues that are concerning like Verizon's current situation, like the transparency and stuff like that, in reality, it just needs to really kind of focus on its people, and its people will do the work of advertising the name and the brand of Verizon. They invest in their people now, and the trust of the customer will come later. I just want to thank you for your time, and like I said, my name is Carl Freeman, and thank you.